Welcome everybody. Happy New Year for those of you on the Western calendar. Um, I'm Graham Smith. Many of you know me. I'm the chair of the Knowledge Network on Climate Assemblies. And really welcome you to this workshop on hearing unheard voices, listening to future generations and non-human nature in climate assemblies. It's often said that two constituencies are absent from assemblies. So, for example, future generations who are going to have be affected by the long-term impacts of climate change, as well as non-human nature, neither of whom have a voice within assemblies. And the question we have today is, how can we best include those their interests, the interests of future generations and non-human nature within assemblies? And does this mean that we need to give them voice? And what would it actually mean in practice to give voice? There are all sorts of philosophical arguments about whether this is something we should do or not. And we will touch on some of those. But philosophy doesn't need to get in the way of us actually doing things practically. And what's really interesting is what's really fascinating is the amount of experimentation that is beginning to emerge around the question of bringing future generations and non-human nature into assemblies. I'm delighted today that we're joined by some really talented and really forward-thinking individuals who have brought some of these ideas into their work and really are leading the practice in this area. We're going to hear a panel initially of from a couple of presentations. One from Tatsuyoshi Saijo, or we're going to call him Yoshi, who is a professor and CEO of the Institute for International Academic Research at the Kyoto University of Advanced Science. And he is famous and well known for many of us as being the creator of future design, which is a way of bringing future generations into assemblies. The second presentation we'll hear will be from Judith Ferrando, who is co-director of Mission Publique, which is one of the leading practitioner organizations in the world. Mission Publique, and Judith in particular, was involved in the French Convention on the Climate, which really kick-started a lot of the work in this area. And they have a lot of experience of trying to bring future generations and non-human nature perspectives into assemblies. And then we'll hear from Lucy Parry, who is the Senior Research Associate for the Centre for Deliberative Democracy in Canberra, Australia. And she's going to reflect on what she's heard from those two presentations before we have a roundtable, and I'll pick up some of the questions that you may well put in the chat. And please do feel free to use the chat. It's a really good way of communicating your thoughts and your questions. We'll then take a short break, and then we'll come back and a really exciting development, something that we've not done before actually, which is to try and actually do an experiment live with two colleagues from La Prossima Cultura, which is an organization in Italy, which is really keen on trying to bring the voice of non-human nature into debates, and they got into assemblies. And Martina, Francesca, and Sara, Bigi are going to lead us through an experiment where we will take on, well, I'm not going to say what we're going to be doing because I'm not entirely sure what we'll be doing, but it will be an experimental moment where we will try and see what one approach we might take for bringing the voice of nature into our conversations. And then we'll have a chance to reflect on those presentations, on the discussion, on that experiment in groups, and try and reflect on how we might take forward this work in this area. So it's a slightly longer workshop. We don't apologize for that. It's a really big topic, and we're trying to open it up in a really new way. And I'm really excited that so many of you have shown an interest in this workshop and have joined us today. So without further ado, actually with further ado, we're going to hear from Yoshi. I just want to say that actually says democracy in Japanese. It was written by someone who was Chinese, but apparently it's the same script in Japan as well, and also in Taiwan. So that's for you, Yoshi. And I'd like to hand over to Yoshi, who's going to talk to us a little bit about his work with future design. A real pleasure to have you with us.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my slide. Thank you very much. And I'm going to talk about future design for the survival of humankind. Survival is important. What are the greatest invention from the 20th century to now? You can think about many inventions, but Shumi said a person, okay. Shumi said, wow, Haber-Bosch, this is a very important invention. Using air, water, burning fossil fuel, they created ammonia cheaply and immensely. Ammonia becomes nitrogen fertilizer. Production for the last 60 years go over more than 10 times. At the same time, ammonia becomes explosives. World War I, II, Ukraine, Gaza, we have been using huge amount of explosives. Then we can increase food production using fertilizers. Next step is population growth, approximately about 2.5 times. More than 10 times for fertilizers, 2.5. Important thing is most of the grains could be more than 80% get into cattle. We want to eat nice meat. See, half of your body is supported by Haber-Bosch. If Haber-Bosch wasn't invented, population, current population could be smaller. And that we also started burning fossil fuel to make our life better and easier, about four times, creating climate change. Wow. See, I have been talking about the nitrogen cycle and carbon cycle, and these are going to be collapsed. Then what will be the next? Inventor of ecological footprint, Reed, he said towards the end of this century, we may experience collapse of civilization. We don't know. So science and technology may create so many future failures. So I spent about a minute talking about history for the last century. Then what's the problem? Of course, science may create future failures. What about market? Future generation, they don't have any money in the current market. Even though they want to reserve some resources, they cannot buy. What about democracy? Representative democracy. Once you want to be a city mayor of your city, and you say, once I'm gonna be a city mayor, I'm gonna ban entire usage of vehicles using fossil fuel. Chemical fertilizer, no way. Can you win? So we must design social systems that activate future ability. What is future ability? I say a person exhibits future ability when he or she experiences an increase in happiness as a result of deciding and acting to forego current benefits as long as it enriches future generations. The activation of future ability is called future design. Idea comes from Iroquois. Imagine being 7 generations later when making important decisions. So I started conducting so many experiments using human subjects. 3 people get together, they can talk up to 10 minutes, They're supposed to choose A or B. Experimenter, give them money instantaneously. Which one would you like to choose? Of course, A, right? However, I'm gonna give you one more condition. Once you guys choose A, the next generation, the A and B must be reduced by 9. If you choose B, next generation A and B stay the same as before. However, they like money. They chose A, then they left. They died. Next generation. Wow, previous generation chose A. For this reason, our A and B must be reduced by 9. Which one are we supposed to choose? Wow, they chose, for example, B. Amount of money is exactly the half. Then they die, they leave. Next generation comes. See? Why? Because the previous generation chose B. Our generation A and B stay the same as before, 27, 27, 18, 18, right? However, they chose A. This kind of experiment. The important thing is the percentage of generations chose B is 28. Now I'm going to introduce imaginary future person. And this person is supposed to negotiate with the other two people representing future generations. Then the percentage goes up more than double. That's the starting point of future design. We also went to Dhaka, Bangladesh. See? With imaginary future person, without imaginary future person, percentage is okay, almost same. No statistical difference. For this reason, we introduced the Iroquois mechanism. Stage one, all three people go to the next generations. Imagine you guys go to the next generation. Please, give some advice to the previous generation. Stage two, then they may come back to the current generation. Then they can decide. Once both are the same, the process ends. If not, use majority voting. Then 31% goes up to 85. That's amazing story, right? Stages 1 and 2 is new social system part. Stage 3 is democracy part, right? So binding majority principle by the Iroquois mechanism. That's one way. And we also started conducting so many practices. Yahaba town. Yahaba town is a very small town. The population is about 28,000. Around 2015, Japanese government asked every town and city, please make some future plan for 2060. These are, usual session. People supposed to go see the future from the present. Wearing these gowns or jackets, they can go to 2060 without changing their ages. These jackets are time machine. From there, please think about current policies. And we spend about a half year. And the important thing is current generation people think, current problem are future problems. Like, wow, even in 2060, we don't like the shortage of elderly people care facilities. This kind of idea. However, imaginary future people, they are so creative. This mountain has a small mountain called Nansho Mountain. At the top of the mountain, there used to be the starting station of the galaxy train. And Kenji Miyadawa, who is a very famous writer, he wrote a very beautiful story called The Night of Galaxy Train. He climbed up this mountain, he made this story. Everybody in the town knows that. Okay, we can change Nansho Mountain to a natural park. So many people can come to Yahaba. So many nice ideas. That's an amazing story. Mayor Takahashi watched these sessions, and he declared Yahaba town is a future design town in 2018. He also made future strategy office. And the people, future designers, they created a comprehensive future plan using future design. You may think, we researchers go to Yahaba town so many times. The answer is no. We just want to provide our system. For the last 7 or 8 years, I talked to Takai-san less than half an hour. So interviews, and we also conducted some interviews. Me as the current person, me as the future person. We thought about these two people have been fighting each other in your brain. The answer is no. Wow. These people thinking, using social point of view, higher point of view, that's an amazing story. And they also said, thinking me as an imaginary future person is my enjoyment. Thinking me as an imaginary future person, even after sessions, whenever I go to supermarket, I naturally think me as an imaginary future person. See? I went to City Hall. City officer told me I'm supposed to think about our future generations. That's a usual session, right? Cognitions are totally different. That's important. So we usually conduct future design this way. Present design the future from the present. That's the usual one, right? Then past design, evaluate past history. Next stage is future design. And we occasionally skip present design. And we also use picture show. I'm going to explain backcasting, forecasting, and future design. Wow, so many methods. You are present. We can see our future, alpha, beta, or gamma forecasting, right? From there, we can backcast. These parts are called present design in our terminology. Now we can think about past. Wow, past people also created a B, C, D division. Then they chose A. Wow, from the present, we can give some advice to the past people. You guys should have been used, okay, D or E. Could be much better than A. This part is called past design. Now we can go to the future. From the future, we can create much better the epsilon or delta visions or ideas. Then backcast. This part is called future design. These green parts are very important. These are the kind of the, okay, so please, okay, give me many critiques. I mean, I'm not show you a kind of the, my view. So my view could be wrong. The citizen assembly is nearly equal to present design. See? Imagine Van Rayblock, he talked about against elections. Randy Moore, she said, well, we're supposed to use open democracy. And OECD report said, randomly choose people, they deliberate, then they can propose policies. From my view, wow. The citizen assembly, important thing is democracy is the basic concept. So designing the future from now. So I'm not proposing that Smith said that can democracy safeguard the future? So future design, survivability is the key concept. Human survivability, design now from the future. So I mean the United Nations Foundation said that a contract for our future. In this page, they talked about that when we are making declaration for future generations, we are going to use citizens assembly and future design. However, they have not been using future design. Here, finally, and you know G7, right? Before G7, we do have Think 7 meeting, preparatory meeting for G7. 2 years ago, we proposed future design for the survival of humankind. Imagine, see, world leaders have been talking about how to punish Russia. Of course, punishing Russia is important. However, you guys are supposed to make a very nice vision for the future. Like, you guys can go to the 2050, like imaginary world leaders, create nice vision, including peace, then come back to the present, create nice policies. That's your job. You guys are not doing your job. That's our proposal. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Yoshi. That was really fascinating. And I look forward to engaging with you in the discussion. Could you stop sharing your screen? Is that possible?
Oh, okay.
So I'd like to pass over to Judith from Mission Publique, who'll talk a little bit about some of the practice that they've been engaged in. Judith, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Graham, and thank you to all the team and the Knoca team for creating this fascinating session, which address a risky topic. And my speech will be really complementary of the speech of Yoshi, based on my practitioner experience. So the question is, can we improve the quality of the assemblies and the decision-making process in giving voice to future generation and non-human nature? And what is the goal? The goal is that humanity could take better decisions now for the future. I guess we agree on it. And we talk here about climate and biodiversity assemblies, and also for the other assemblies on other topics, urban planning, societal issues, and etc. And after hundreds of citizen assemblies on climate these last 15 years in Europe and in the world, can we do better? Can we do much better? It is also the goal of Knoca. And the answer that I will give is yes, we can. We could be, we are perhaps at the verge of a new generation of citizen assemblies. As you said, Graham, I'm co-director of Mission Publique, an organization based in Paris, Brussels, and Bonn, with partners and fellowship all over the planet. Since 1998, we are pioneered in shaping public dialogues that intertwine with political decision-making. As you say, we ran our first climate citizen assembly in 2007 at the scale of a French region, and also the French National Assembly on Climate 5 years ago, and also European Citizens Panels for the Future of Europe, and now for the European Commission. And our experience led us to a perspective, a new perspective. It's time to shift the narrative that we have on citizen assemblies and to include voices beyond our immediate time frame. Include the voices of unborn generation and the voices of the non-human living system. But first, why it is imperative to change? I will share with you two main reasons. The first one is that our journey through citizens' assemblies reveals us a stark reality. Despite diverse socio-cultural backgrounds, the discourse remains largely stable. We ask same question to citizens, and the framing is most of the time really similar, and at the end we have the similar answer on proposal. And even if citizens try to think to the long term, most of the proposals are short-termist and anthropocentric. So we need to change the framing. And the second reason is that some of the time we have a common misconception about future generation, as you said, Yoshi. We think that prioritizing youth into consultations equates to representing future generation. But it is a misconception. The youth, indeed pivotal, cannot singularly and alone be the responsibility of future stewardship. And it could be also a misconception to exclude older generation, assuming they are incapable of evolving perspective and acting in the right direction. And if you have a look on the Athenian democracy, the Athenian definition of demos is, of course, antiquated. Today, we know that demos is more inclusive. We try to ensure that our demos nowadays encompasses all of the society. But imagine if for the future, the demos include also the living system and the not yet born generation. It's why we propose two transformative elements into our facilitation methods. Dialogue with the seventh generation, you talk on it, Yoshi, a little bit, and also a dialogue with the non-human living system. About the seventh generation insight, as you remind us, Yoshi, it is inspired by Native American wisdom. My colleague, Yves Mathieu, encountered some of this Native American wisdom more than, I don't know, perhaps 20 years ago. And we have adopted the principle of considering the impact of our decisions on the condition of life of the seventh future generation. We do that by inviting the members of citizen assemblies to enter into a non-fictional dialogue with humans that will be the seventh generation to follow us. This practice is also a way to implement the vision of the Declaration of the UNESCO of Rights of Future Generation. Yes, this principle of our responsibility towards this generation in policy making has been adopted by governments 27 years ago. And we must say that is not a true reality now. So we have designed a protocol that allows participants to directly connect them with a long-term future perspective, not in 30 years, but in more than 200 years, enriching the deliberation with associated arguments. And about the voice of the living system, it is closely linked to the emerging movement towards recognizing the legal personhood of nature, you know, river, lakes, and even the climates. It signals us a paradigm shift. Legal frameworks are evolving to acknowledge these entities as integral stakeholders. It's a signal from law, but it's also a way to doing things like it happened in much in the world, where nature is traditionally more integrated part of the deliberation. You can think about the rendezvous under the tree, the fire ceremony, before our discussion in North America, the Pachamama ceremony, and a lot of examples. And by incorporating this perspective into our deliberation, we are not just enhancing justice criteria, it is the first goal, but also addressing global challenges in a more holistic manner. It's not a magical wand, but it is a way to enlarge the mindset of the deliberation. If natural personhood can change court decision or constitution, why wouldn't it positively influence the way of public policy are designed in participatory democracy? And on the other hand, if the living system inspires us for design of car, for buildings, for medicine, why shouldn't it also inspire our decision making and our democracy? This is, of course, our way of mind, but I can hear you with what is coming in your mind. Really interesting, but in practice, how does it work? And even, does it work? We've experimented with different ways of integrating these issues into democratic process, into democratic deliberation. And we're still testing and inventing. We are really humble of what we share with you today, and we are sure that we can learn a lot of you, all of you, about how to do it. But I will explain you some tips that we have and some processes that we have for engaging with the seventh generation. First, it's kind of like a guided meditation. It takes 1 hour. First, we encourage participants to formulate questions that resonate deeply with them, and that will be for them the question. The question they will ask if they could meet human being living this place in 210 years. Once the question found, we guide them to a virtual encounter with a couple of human beings with who they will have a conversation. After the conversation, everything is done in silence, as you can imagine. They come back to the present, they open their eyes, and they bring to the group the key message that they have received. We invite them to experiment the dialogue. Of course, we do not force the participant to do it, to experiment it. And the vast majority of participants try the game. They formulate a question and come back with really huge materials or new idea. This process unearths profound question and vision. The main impact is that by doing that, the members focus on what is the most essential aspect of the topics for them. And they bring into deliberation new arguments, new priorities. It helps us to answer the desiring question: what do we really value? What is essential for humanity? And it is the main question for democratic deliberation. About the second thing, how to incorporate the living system into deliberation, we have experimented different approach. I may say different levels. The first level is really easy. Just acknowledging the living system in deliberation, considering elements like water resources, ecosystem continuity. How? Just in telling people to pay attention on it in their discussion. And now it is now obvious for a large majority of participants. For instance, in a recent work with 300 citizens in Geneva, in Switzerland, we could see how it was obvious for citizens to consider the water flows, the continuity of biodiversity, the transformation of waterproof surfaces into porous grounds, the coexistence between urban and more peri-urban wildlife with humans. And I may say that citizens are probably 10 years ahead of decision making, because it is something really, really not easy for us. It is an odd question, how to convince decision and policymaker, but it's another question. The second level is to invite participants to connect with a place in their daily life, a chosen natural place they like, and to take the time by closing their eyes and relax to imagine a discussion with the non-human living of this place. And after 30 minutes of this discussion, internal discussion, they come back with new ideas and larger vision of justice criteria, including justice for the living system. We did it, for instance, in a local climate assembly in a suburban place near of Paris. And it was really astonishing for people to discover that they live into the nature. Even if they live in town, the nature is here. It's not only a landscape, it's not only an aesthetic part of their life, it is a basic part of their life. We also experiment, and I could back again on it after if you need it, we experiment with partner a deep time walk. I don't know if you know what is a deep time walk. It is a physical embodiment of Earth history to contextualize humanity place within it. It takes about 2 hours. You walk, and one step represents 1 million years. And you start just before the Earth exists. So you walk 2 hours, and only at the end, at the last step, it is the humanity. So you realize that what is the core is only the last step, and the history of planet is more than 4 billion years of a slow evolution. And what happened when we do that? Members understand better that we are not the pilot of the Earth. If we can compare the planet with a vessel, even we are not the co-pilot, we are only one part of passengers. And it's really interesting to defocus the discussion. First level, it is to use persona cards representing non-human entities to diversify perspectives. For instance, we try it, it was a discussion, it was a public debate on water management. And we give card to people, to citizens, with a common fish of our river and a plant. And they have to imagine what could be the future for this kind of people. It helped us really strongly to renew the vision of the conflicts on the water management program and to anticipate in another way what could happen with the decision to take. Well, this is some experience, and of course we continue to imagine new approaches. But let me just to finish share with you a dream about tomorrow. First, of course, we have to achieve to make the proof of the added values of these protocols to decision makers. They are not really, really ready to be convinced. Perhaps they have to experiment it themselves to be convinced. Well, there was an incredible range of experimentation to conduct, and we are ready, of course, after the discussion to share with you some protocols more detail, because we all have to try it. But our goal is to establish a new standard for citizen assembly, the assembly of the 3/3. The assembly will equally represent current humanity, the servant's future generation in the living system. It could be a really good experience, a way to take on board all your experience, Yoshi, but also the experience about living system. That is our dream, and if ever you are interested to contribute to this experimentation, and we have a playground through us, it could be really a good collaboration. And last thing is not directly our job, but we also advocating for a movement that encourage every entity, from corporation to government, but also into the NGOs, to allocate decision-making seats to next generation and to living system into their, as crucial stakeholder, into the arena of decision. So thank you for your attention, and I will be more than happy to continue this discussion with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Some really interesting ideas and tips in there as well about actually how to do this. That's really fantastic. So we've rather than me responding immediately, which is usually the way, we've invited our colleague Lucy Parry from Canberra to give a few comments about what she's heard. Lucy has been working particularly on the issue of the role of animals within assemblies, but I know has a broader interest. So Lucy, what did you get out of that?
Great, thank you. I've been kind of adding notes as I go along, and my number of points has expanded, but we've got the panel discussion as well. So thanks, Graham, and thank you to the speakers for sharing all your experiences today. I just want to start off by acknowledging that the University of Canberra, with whom I work, is situated on the unceded land of the Ngunnawal people, and I want to acknowledge their elders past and present, and to acknowledge all of the First Nations people on whose land we might be gathering today. I also want to acknowledge the already existing and long-standing practices of deliberation and knowledge systems, including of many Indigenous cultures, that give deep consideration and acknowledge the agency of future generations and non-human entities that have inspired some of the methods we're talking about today. So I'm going to try and go through 5 very quick points. The first is more conceptual, and I think the rest are pretty practical. So I thought the point that Yoshi made about the basic organizing concepts of citizens' assemblies, but its future design, was really interesting. And I guess my response as someone interested in democratic theory is to think about, well, what kind of democracy are we talking about? Are all concepts of democracy such a threat to future survivability? And then to think more practically, then what is the role of democracy in future design? Are they compatible either theoretically or practically? And can we think about something like democratic survivability? This is just a kind of point for discussion. So moving on to the more practical. The second thing that I thought about, which is how do you in your work prepare participants to take part in these kind of processes? So we know that in some mini publics, for example, facilitators try to support participants to evaluate evidence and build on critical thinking skills. So Lynn Carson and Mosaic Lab in Australia in particular have done a lot of work around this. And it seems to me that both the kind of role play in future design and the guided internal deliberation the Mission Publique do could be quite unfamiliar ways of thinking for lots of people. So how do you lay the foundations for that? Do participants need these kind of future thinking skills? Do they need some support to be open to the perspectives of other species? So how do you do that in your work? I'd be interested in that. The next thing is one conversation that I've had recently, and I've been thinking about when I think about how to involve non-human animals in deliberation, is I'm thinking, should they be considered participants, deliberators, or should they be like stakeholders, like the expert witnesses bringing in their testimony and lived experience, presenting that to the human deliberators? But it seems that both Yoshi and Judith's experiences tell us that participants taking on these roles or going through that internal process is crucial to its effectiveness, right? There's something, this is where the magic seems to happen. There's a shift in mindset, a decentering of the now and of the human that's happening. There's, like I said, this kind of internal deliberation going on, and that seems really important. So then if we think about non-human animals or future generations only as stakeholders or as expert witnesses, does that weaken some of the transformative potential? But then I was also thinking, the methods we discussed today still remain very much kind of in the human realm, right? They're still human interactions. And I'm thinking, can we think of more immersive or creative ways to augment interaction or enhance perspective taking between non-human animals and human deliberators through virtual reality or AI or other kind of creative techniques? And then maybe this doesn't need to be an either or question, but rather we need to think about multiple or complementary ways in which unheard voices can be brought into the deliberations that include role play, that include immersive experiences, and so on. And then another thing I've been thinking about is the role of sortition in the representation of unheard voices. And maybe this is more a provocation, it's just something to put out there. If in a mini public we want to gather a group of people who broadly reflect the makeup of the demographics of the wider population, what does this look like when we apply that principle to include other animals? Now, I looked for some statistics about, say, the number of animals slaughtered for human consumption in the UK, and I found very different numbers. So I can't give you a number, but I'm pretty sure that in so many policy areas, the number of individual animals affected by the decisions that we make would mean that if we applied that sortition principle, the number of animals are going to vastly outweigh our human participants. And I just think that that is something powerful just to think about. And then that led me to think about the benefits. Is it more efficient? Is it more effective to think about representing living systems instead of animals? Now, there's a long history of conceptual and theoretical debates around this, ecosystems versus individual animals, but I'm interested in the practical. So what are the practical implications or benefits of representing individual animals over systems or vice versa? So I guess that would be a question to Judith. So why living systems? What are the implications of that? What kind of impact does that have on the deliberation or on the human participants? And again, it doesn't need to be an either or. We need to be thinking about both, right? And methods to incorporate both. And then my last point is a really quick one, and it's basically just a list, but we need to not forget in all this to think about some of the same things that we're already talking about for citizens' assemblies and mini publics more broadly, right? And I've thought of three things here: scaling, accountability, and systems change. And we know already, these are already live topics for discussion. And, you know, things like accountability and all those things are potential weaknesses in many publics at the moment, or they're certainly things that we're thinking about strengthening and trying to build upon and develop. But that seems to me even more urgent in the case of unheard voices. So just to put that in there. And then the very last thing I'll do is to just mention my own work. So I'm working with a wonderful group of people. It includes Martina and Sara, and it includes some other people who I think are here today as well, in a project called Animals in the Room, where we're hoping to develop some experiments in this area. And I want to thank the speakers and Knoca for organizing this, because I learned a huge amount through listening to Judith and Yoshi. And I think that will be immensely helpful to take forward in our work. And I think looking at the chat for lots of other people in the audience today as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for your thoughts and your provocations. Can we bring Yoshi and Judith back into the space?
Okay, and am I supposed to
Yeah.
answer every question?
Yoshi, do you want to respond to any of the immediate questions that that Lucy raised?
Mm-hmm. Sure, and I'm slightly attacking democracy, but however, democracy is supposed to be expanded, including future. So, and the important thing is that whenever we want to introduce our future, do we have to develop a kind of special method? Of course, this is important. However, from our childhood, giving some practice, thinking about the future from the future, we can do that. I'm not so sure animal can do. We can go to our future, imaginary. From there, thinking about current position. We also started using future design ideas for college education. Usually, students talking about the future using selfish point of view. Imagine science. See? Science may help us. See? However, important thing is that putting them into the future, then they started talking about social systems for the future. That's amazing story. And the other important thing is that you mentioned about how to make people to the future. We usually use past design. Saying something to the past. We can do that, right? Why did you do that? Well, thank you very much. I don't care now, right? Once you experience this kind of a past design, people can easily thinking about, wow, 2024, you guys supposed to reduce CO2 emissions. You didn't. Why didn't you do that? Right? So means naturally people started using future design type of technology once we use past design. And finally, then do we use facilitators a lot? The answer is no. We try not to use facilitators. Do we need facilitators? When we are thinking about our future, see, we don't need facilitators. Means we want our future design type of ideas into social systems. We don't have to go to any place. These days, we scarcely go to any other locations. We are going to provide our systems. We are the people, see, who are kind of black, hiding ourselves. I scarcely talk about a future design type of ideas to the people who have been doing future design type of sessions. So means that I just want to make the future design type of ideas in social systems. Like these days, the Ministry of Finance created a future design team. They want to develop future design ideas to every ministry. So they want to make future design type of ideas to the platform of our government. So means that's our destination. United Nations, please use our ideas. G7 leaders, they can use that. So means deliberation people may limit, choosing people randomly. Wow, world leaders, they're not gonna be chosen randomly. We chose them, right? So we are the people who can force them to think about our future. Please create nice policies for us, for the future. That's our destination. So I mean the way how we have been doing could be slightly different from other people, but then we want to develop our social systems in order to survive. Can we survive 100 or 200 years later? That's our destination, not for democracy. That's our idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Yoshi. I think the point about path design, and I hadn't really appreciated how important that was in your method, but I think that's a really critical way of thinking. Judith, did you have anything in response to Lucy's provocations at all?
Yes, of course. So first of all, thank you, Lucy, to launch the discussion like that. But just some precision. First of all, giving a voice to living system, nature, animals, and to future generation is not the unique key to improve our assembly. Of course, it is our topic today. It is a really important key, but it's not the unique one. And of course, decision makers have to increase accountability of these methods, and it couldn't be the key for that, for instance. So just to be humble about what we can solve with the topic of today. That's the first one. The second thing that I would like to explain is that we have not the claim to say that the citizen will talk in the name of living system. It's just for us a way, a method to first to have an emotional relationship with a larger scope of reflection, and it is something really to move people inside their own perception of the arguments and the rationales to take this decision or this decision. It is a first goal. It is an emotional other focus for people. And the second one is how we prepare participants. We give them some information. We not only ask them to play, I don't know, to play a fish or to play a flower, but we give them information about what could be the impact of the current and the future situation on these spaces, for instance. And we ask them to imagine what could be the concerns of the fish if ever the fish can talk. And it's also really important to invite citizens into our deliberative methods to think not only to the animals we love. For instance, if we talk about the protection of oceans, it's not easy, but it's easier to think for the whale, than for the plankton. But if tomorrow we have no more plankton, we will all die. So it's really important also to think to the part of the nature not really close to us. And of course, it is for us, before all, a way to enlarge the scope of arguments and rationale, and to be sure that the decisions that we have to take today could anticipate the impacts on other parts of humanity, non-present humanity, and living system into our planet. But it's only it's our goal. It's not to believe that we can talk in the name of, because the citizen has not all the information, all the facts to be sure to address properly some purpose it on it. I hope it's clearer like that.
Lucy, did you want to have a response or?
Yeah, thanks, Judith, for clarifying. I think how you explained what you do there, that you're not trying to speak in the name of or explicitly represent, that made that distinction very clear. So thank you. I love that you mentioned it's not only the animals that we love or feel a connection to that you're focusing on. I think that's incredibly important. So it's great to hear that. And you also raised another important point as well, is that we're not only thinking about human future generations and non-human animals and living systems, we're thinking about the non-human animals and living systems also in the future, right? So it's another generation kind of detached as well, but that's really important to keep that in mind as well. So thank you.
I have.
If I can,
sorry, go.
If you can write to something into the chat, I'm sorry because I have not the time to read it. But David, you insist about the fact that sometimes when we when decision makers try to think about the name of the future, they take really bad decision. You quote Joseph Stalin, for instance, but for me it is a risk. Of course, we are not sure that that the arguments that citizens can enlighten by this kind of exercises could be the good one, but for us it's the first goal is to enlarge the scope of the argument, and after to discuss about the strategies between these arguments, because when we have to take decision for the future, there is a lot of contradictory point of view, and just to be sure that we have the right scale, perimeter of the arguments on the table to discuss properly. But of course, there is a lot of risk and a kind of tyranny of the argument of the future, of what we think could be the argument of the future.
I think there's an important point there as well, Judith. I think that that you're asking a diverse group of people to do this work rather than one person, rather than a kind of like a particular leader who's got a particular perspective. This is actually trying to bring multiple perspectives into the room, which I think is multiple perspectives into the debate, which I think changes that dynamic, which will change the dynamic from a sort of closed group of people making decisions about the future. I think that is an important distinction. I'm going to just get very practical for a second, because Yoshi, I think you may be wearing one, but you actually get people to wear a special jacket to put the to have them as future people. And I noticed Judith, that in your discussion you talked a lot about getting people to almost to have internal conversations, to be in a sort of meditative, to become almost like a meditative state. And what interests me is that both of you in a different way are trying to create a space within which people think and act differently, and that's really important to your methods, is almost like trying to pull people out of that sort of immediate space of conversations and sort of the typical environment that we're all very familiar with within an assembly, and get them to feel like they're somewhere else. And I'm just kind of interested in that. How important is that sort of trying to create a different kind of space? So, okay, now I am doing something different than I would usually be doing within an assembly. So Yoshi, do you want to tell us something about the importance that you place on this actually wearing something? Why do you do that?
Sure, and this kind of jacket is important for the first time. You don't have to do that later. The important thing is, and a future design type of thinking, it must be your daily thinking. That's our destination. So mean that when many people get together, and now we are going to conduct some future design session, then wearing this kind of clothes maybe change your mind, mean that setting a kind of a special space is important. However, once you get used to, you don't have to naturally. So yeah, in a city hall, and a person who has been thinking about a kind of the infrastructure of the town, then these people supposed to think about, okay, think about 10 years later. See, once we go to 10 years later, then see, imagine what will happen. From there, thinking about current policy. Not many people have been doing that way, changing the way how to do that. That's our idea. Then we scarcely use our facilitator, then we scarcely use our kind of a person who can talk about climate change, talking about nitrogen cycle. Important thing is that giving some information beforehand. Imagine famous professor Graham Smith talk about the climate change. Are we supposed to follow his ideas? In experimental economics, and this is called the demand effect. We want to avoid demand effect. Thank you.
Okay, that makes sense. And Judith, for you, this is obviously we're being joined by a non-human participant. I can see in Lucy. Judith.
Yes, we don't have yet jackets for it, but of course it's really important. If you want that citizens take another point of view, that's our daily life point of view, you know, with all your rationale to think nothing else is possible, there is no alternative, you need to offer them a new mood, a new experience. It could be it could be materializing things or space with no picture, with jacket, with cards, with music. It could be theatricalize a bit the discussion, but even if you want to think to the best decision to take to achieve the climate transition, the ecological transition, we need to have more inputs into our methods, more generally than the question of today. We need to have more inputs to help people to think differently, and the culture, the art could have a really huge role into this way to improve our methodological approaches. It could be theater, it could be movie, it could be an exhibition, it could be a way to use our body with walking into the nature, into the forest, dancing and so on. But we need to have something to change our mindset, and it is really important. And I think that we have a lot to do with some other practitioners from the different arts on it.
It's really interesting. The image that's behind you, the image of the tree and the people sitting around the tree is really interesting, because I know that the assembly in the Irish Biodiversity Assembly, they actually went out to 3 different ecological areas and spent time in those areas before they started their deliberations. And they also, the Children and Young People's Assembly, did a lot of their work outside. That they actually felt that even those very simple things, getting people out of a room. I mean, you get people out of a room by going in there, by doing some meditation, but actually literally going out of the room, I think is really critical. I've got a couple of questions. Well, one I'm going to ask, which was kind of interesting to me, which comes from Charlie Hicks. He's asking about, how do you persuade politicians who are often very conservative about the way that, kind of engaging people, that this is a good way of doing things? How do you persuade politicians to actually take these kinds of processes seriously? It's one thing to try and persuade people to do a citizens' assembly. It's another to say, oh, and we're going to do these things like future design. We're going to get people to imagine themselves, or we're going to bring non-human nature into the room. Do you find that how do politicians react to these ideas? Judith, do you have you must have had experience of trying to sell this to people.
Sometimes it's really hard to convince politicians and public servants to do it, because they have the fear that some observers can say, well, it's not really serious. What are you doing? It's a game for young people, what you are doing. And sometimes it's, most of all, it is fear of not to be serious. And sometimes, most of times, we achieve to convince a politician to do an experimentation, but you know, it is rhetorical, an experimentation. So to take a small part of a day to try something different. Okay, to say, okay, it is your I don't know, your white card to do it. It is a joker. You can do it. You have, I don't know, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. But after when they saw what it could be, they are more convinced that at the beginning. That's the first. But you know, in another part of our activity, we are training politicians about deliberative approach, and when they do the experience themselves after they're convinced, but they have to live it most of the time. And for instance, for the French Citizen Assembly, it was absolutely impossible to propose to the governance body to try this kind of exercise, because they were really stressed by the situation.
They were very concerned. Some of them were very conservative about what you were doing. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Yoshi, do you have any tips about how to persuade reluctant politicians or civil servants about the virtues of these methods?
I'm not persuading politicians. Imagine we conduct some in a city, citizens started conducting a future design session. Then a congressperson, like an assembly people, they may be interested in the meeting. Several people may participate in the meeting, then gradually expanding, right? So that's a kind of the first step. Then mayor. And these days, I don't know why, but high-ranked officer in the Ministry of Finance, he thought about a future design type of idea is important. For this reason, he created a team, future design team. Then this team member started disseminating our ideas to the other ministries, politicians. So I'm not convincing them. See, so mean that disseminating our ideas and gradually people who have some power started using our ideas. So that's my way. It means that once I go to some city and I try to convince city mayor, I don't think he can follow me. See?
But I actually think there's something really important here, and we've experienced this with Knoca, which is once you've had 1 or 2 cities or people use it, actually having peer-to-peer conversations is really important. That actually being able to say, look, this was used in this city, and these are people like yourself. They can do similar kinds of things. So I think sometimes the most important thing for us is to introduce policy professionals to other policy professionals who have done a similar thing. And I think that seems to have worked quite well with some of the developments with assemblies, for sure. I just want to ask one other question, I guess, before we take a break, and this is about participants' reaction to these processes. And I'll give Lucy an opportunity to ask a question as well in a second, or just make a comment about what you've heard. One of the contributors was asking the question about, are some participants reluctant to do this? Because this is a kind of role-playing exercise. It's a particular way of doing things, which some people may feel they just don't enjoy doing that kind of stuff. They don't want to do it. So has your experience been one of reticence, or how have you managed to persuade people that this is a good thing to do, and not being seen as something and I don't really mean this negatively, as something but childish or playful, and it's not serious. Do you have that problem at all, and how do you manage to overcome that? Yoshi, you're nodding very vigorously, so I'm kind of interested to.
Sure, and we usually get a group, and the total number of the group is up to 4. So means that among the 4, usually one or two person can be imaginary future person. And a person said, I'm 70 years old, and I'm thinking about 20 years later, I'm gonna die. I don't care. However, start seeing other people becoming imaginary future people, gradually, they are going to follow them. See? That's the way how imaginary future people work. Of course, and I cannot convince everybody, right? And several people cannot. That's okay. Imagine 70% of the people or 80% of the people, they became imaginary future people. That's wonderful. That's my way of observation.
Okay, that's good. That's great. And Judith, do you ever have any issues with people not wanting to play the game?
Not really an issue, because of course there is some reluctant people, but they are really a minority of people, and they're not really against the principle or the exercise, but they don't feel any inspiration on it. So they say, okay, I try, but I get nothing. But most of people are enthusiasts. Some people are a little bit embarrassed. They don't know how to do, because they say, okay, I have no skill on it. I have not enough information on it. They don't feel competent to think like that. But when they understand that it is not, the goal is not to take the floor in the name of, but to enlarge the scope, after, it's okay for them. And we also have to accept that at the beginning is not easy. I remember of really young people with the card of the common fish of the river. It is, I don't know the name in English, it's épinoche in French. It is really a little fish. And at the beginning, say, okay, what I can say for this fish. After they go into their smartphone and have a look at some picture of the fish, and they read some fun fact about this fish and is I don't know, is reproduction or something like that, and it was really funny for them. And after they go into the exercise, so we have to accept that sometimes with all our exercise, people take a time to dive. That's all.
I think it's actually true of every part of an assembly, isn't it? Everything you do, there's going to be people who are more confident and happy to do it, and other things. And it's just gonna. And I think actually one of the lovely things about these kind of ways of doing things, you may be able to motivate some people to do this who wouldn't want to do other things. So I think there's I think this is really important. Lucy, do you have any last thoughts or comments?
I mean, what I was about to say is pretty much what you just said, Graham. Just, the way that the evidence is usually presented in an assembly, not everybody is able to engage with that easily. That's a particular way of presenting evidence, PowerPoints, talking and all that kind of thing. So yeah, you might offer an opportunity for people who don't feel very engaged in the standard evidence presentation to engage in a different way. So I think it comes back to, again, what all the other speakers have mentioned, is offering multiple methods within whatever the deliberative process is. That's how you're going to maximize the engagement of people, is by offering different methods that people are kind of attracted to as well.
That's great. Thanks, Lucy. A couple other points. Just Amit was asking about getting to a point where we can do some comparative studies of this. I think it'd be really, I think we're really in the early days. There may be some work that's already done in Japan like that. The other point I just wanted to make was actually to just respond to something that Judith said at the end about this idea of allocating a decision-making seat in corporations or in other bodies. And I think this is really interesting, because I think the comparison with assemblies here is really interesting, because in an assembly, it would feel very strange to actually have somebody who came in and sat saying, I am now representing this aspect of non-human nature, or I am representing future generations, because it would break the kind of the kind of different types of status. There will be different types of status in the room, whereas everybody, there is a form of political equality. So I think what we might do with company boards or with charities is very different, I think, from what we would do in this kind of democratic space. I think it's a really interesting challenge. Anyway, listen, this has been a really fantastic discussion. Thank you so much. And we're going to take a break. I've been told by my colleagues, we've actually got a problem with the Zoom at the moment, and we might not be able to break out into groups. If that is the case, we'll just do a more general discussion afterwards. But please do stick with us. We're going to come back at I'm on the wrong clock here because I'm in the UK. We're going to come back at 12:25 in European time, and we're going to be led by Martina, Francesca, and Sara Bigi from La Prossima Cultura through the kind of exercise that we've been discussing now. We thought it would be a really good opportunity for us to try and do something together. I've actually been told you've got a bit more time, so you can go and make a cup of coffee. So actually, we're going to have 10 minutes. So we'll meet back at 12:30, and then we'll have a discussion after that of our experience and also what we've heard in these breakout groups. From these different speakers. So I'll see you all in about 10 minutes time. Please do come back if you can. I think it'll be a really interesting exercise for us to share the space and to try and do some creative work together. Look forward to seeing you all in about 10 minutes. Take care. So have we got... Well, hello everybody. We've had to play around a bit with our agenda because for some reason the Zoom technology has let us down, which it occasionally does. What we're going to do now is continue with the experiment and the sort of that we promised you with our colleagues from La Prossima Cultura. And after that, what we'll do is we'll come back as a group, and I'll manage a bigger group conversation about what we've experienced, and people can contribute ideas for the last sort of 20 minutes or so. Martina and Sara, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, so they're not only there, but we've got a thumbs up as well, which is fantastic. So Sara, Martina, you've actually got a little bit more time if you need it. So if you need another 5 minutes or so, that's absolutely it's not a problem. Okay. But I would really like to welcome to Knoca, Martina and Sara, who are going to do something which we've not tried before, which is actually do some experiential work in a Knoca workshop. So over to you, and look forward to it.
Thank you very much, and we are very, very happy to be here and to do this kind of experiment that is somehow similar to what the other speakers were mentioning before. Of course, we are online, and the time that we have available is not that much, even though we will maybe take those extra 5 minutes. So we will have a small taste with the time and means that we have available now, but we hope that it will be an inspiration and a first way to get in touch with this other dimension that is non-human beings. So this is our goal and our hope for the exercise. It will be a sort of guided meditation. It will be an individual exercise, and then we will collect some of your experiences or impressions in a document, so that we can have a sort of overview of what happened and how it was for you. So, as I was saying, the idea is to get in touch with this other dimension, which is a dimension that is very different from our human dimension, but we are interconnected with this dimension. If we study ecology and biology, we can discover how fascinating this interconnection is. And to be able to give voice to non-human beings or non-human dimension In our opinion, it is important not only to know in theory that we are interconnected, but also to feel and to experience it in our bodies. So this is what we will try to do in this taste, this small taste. So we will also use our bodies and try to, yes, to have some information, to listen to some information that comes from the body. We have listened to a lot of information and nourished our minds. So now let's give space to the body. And this is what we will invite you to do. So another piece of information before starting, we would like to do this exercise standing up, if possible. The idea is to that it will last around 10-12 minutes. So the invitation is to stand up for around 10 to 12 minutes. You judge for yourself whether it is possible for you or not. If you are in a uncomfortable position, if you have any kind of pain or whatever it is, if it's not possible for you, that's fine, no worries. But if it's possible to you, for you, I invite you to stand up and take those 10 to 12 minutes for this exercise. So I'm going to stand up to be with you in this exercise. And first of all, I will invite you to find a comfortable position, whether standing or sitting down or on the sofa or wherever you are. So find a position where you feel stable and firm on your feet, your body. And let's take a few moments to focus on our bodies, our breath. You may close your eyes if you feel comfortable, or you can keep them open if you prefer to. And the invitation is to bring your attention and listen to the different parts of your body, starting from your feet, your ankles, your legs. Trying to feel the sensations and feelings that your body is experiencing. Maybe hot or cold feelings, pressure, your muscles, tense or relaxed. Then let's bring our attention up, the hips, belly, upper back, shoulders. Our arms and hands, always listening and paying attention to what our body is feeling right now. And let's go up again to our neck and head. And let's take a few moments to breathe as we listen to our bodies. And now we gradually prepare ourselves to meet a non-human living being. So let's keep our attention in this state of concentration. Let's keep listening to our bodies. And Let's see if there's any non-human living being that we want to make contact with, or that maybe wants to make contact with us. Maybe there is an image that comes to us, or a sound, or a feeling that can help us choose or identify this non-human being. And if you have one, we'll now ask permission from this being so that we can try to get in contact with this being, try to embody and listen to what it has to say or to communicate to us. So, for those of you who are standing, I invite you to take a step forward or sideways, a step into a new identity, an identity that is broader than our individual selves, and that we are going to try and stay in this identity. And for those of you who are sitting or in other positions, I invite you to make a gesture to mark this moment of transition into a new identity, a new dimension. So we are now in a new space. We are into a non-human dimension, and I invite you to feel your body transform and take on the features and characteristics of this being. Perhaps your arms transform into wings and you feel feathers sprouting from your skin, or maybe a fur coat covers your body. Maybe your senses become heightened. Maybe you're swimming underwater. Take a few moments to feel this new dimension. Let's pay attention to your bodies, this new dimension, any feeling or any sensation. Maybe let's see if there's anything that is emerging from your non-human identity. Maybe it's sound, maybe it's an image, maybe it's a feeling, something that would be important to share and to communicate with the humans that are here today. And let's take a few moments more to see if there's anything that you want to communicate that is emerging from your body, from this non-human dimension. Just a few more seconds. We now prepare to step back into the human identity. So when you are ready to leave this non-human experience, take a step back to where you were at the beginning. Or if you are sitting, do the same gesture again that marks this transition to human identity. And let's take a few moments to go back. Little by little, let's get back in touch with our human body, our human identity. Maybe we can move our fingers a little bit, move our feet. Also touch ourselves so that we can come back to this human dimension. So you can open your eyes when you're ready. And go back to your chair if you want to. Sit down again. And now maybe some of you experienced an image or sound or something that came up or emerged while we were in the non-human dimension. Maybe for some of you, this didn't happen. It's okay. It's nothing. I mean, there's nothing right or wrong in this kind of experience. So let's take a couple of minutes to try and put into human words what we have experienced, we have heard or felt, or an image that came to our mind. So we are trying to transform that feeling or that image into human words. So let's start to think how to do that. What words could express this kind of experience? And see that there's something in the chat, but I will also share a link here so that we can collect everything in the same place. If you want, you can open this Jamboard. Just take a couple of minutes, try and write down what is that you, in your non-human dimension, what is that you wanted to communicate or to, what was your experience, anything that came up.
If anyone is new to Jamboard, it's really like just a board with sticky notes. We put some sticky notes already, but you can add some. You find it in the bar on the left of your screen. From there you can add how many sticky notes you would like. Let's give ourselves one more minute, then I will try to read some of them to you out loud. Okay, so just to let you know, first of all, thank you for using this instrument Jamboard. Of course, it would be impossible to hear everybody's voices, but this is a little way. What I'm going to do in the next maybe 10 minutes or so, maybe you will see my camera off, because I will take all these thoughts and I will write them down in order, and then we will send you back this file by the end of the meeting, so that you can keep it, you can collect it, or you can just leave it as you want. But now I still have about 5 minutes, and I want to give voice to some of your voices. I first of all want to say something that I am thinking right now. I have many thoughts now following the previous people who talked, and I thank you for that. And my first thought now is that it is possible to lead people in experiencing the feelings of another being or another living system. It's possible also in like 30 minutes online, which is not the best for sure, but still it's possible. People feel and people can feel like another being. What I'm reading in your little sticky notes is that feelings are different. Maybe there's all the rainbow of feelings in doing some exercise like this, because there's peace and there's warm, there's loss, there's hunger, and there's also freedom, there's also lightness, there's calm and peace. So first of all, every feeling is valid and is important. And there's really a rainbow of feelings here. The second thing is that you really felt very different beings. Someone felt like a leaf, someone felt like a bear, someone felt the wind, and someone felt the stars, and really every living beings around us, not just animals, not just, I don't know, really living systems. Another little thing that comes out is some fear about humans. I think this is interesting. And also, on the other hand, there's just this feeling of just being. Maybe as humans, we experiment some feelings such as, I don't know, anxiety or stress that we believe or we feel that other beings would not feel. Some more freedom, some more calm and peace. from what I can see, it was a positive experience. Also a difficult one for some of you. And I think, Martina, that we could go to a closure, and I will kind of collect all these feelings, and we will send the document back to you by the end of our meeting today, so that you can collect all these feelings. And we really hope we will, I don't know, have more chances for experiences like this. So thank you for experimenting with us.
Yes, maybe as a last remark, just trying to imagine or to envision how this kind of experience and all that came up after this very small exercise could contribute to a complex topic that we have to decide upon, or to a conflict, or to something that is really that really requires to be looked at from different perspectives. And how would it be like to look at that topic from the perspective of, I don't know, a tree that feels big and over the ground, feeling the wind and the rain. I was just reading one of the Post-it notes, how that could contribute to a specific topic or conflict or complex decision. I think that could give a very different perspective and maybe enrich the process and the deliberation. So thank you again for experimenting with us.
Thank you so much, Martina. Thank you so much, Sara. That was really, really powerful, actually, for me anyway. I mean, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, I thought, sorry, it really brought to mind what Judith was saying about how it can change perspectives and bring in different arguments, and I really appreciated that. Part of me actually wants to just say, let's stop now, because I feel quite relaxed and kind of in a slightly different space than I was an hour or two ago. So, but I would like to just give the opportunity, if anybody wants to take the floor, make any comments about what they've heard from Yoshi, Judith, or Lucy, or what they think they might have learned from Martina and from Sara, or if there's a comment, just a general comment you want to make about the topic of the day. I'll just leave that. If you just feel that you don't need to do that, that's fine as well. So I'll just please use the hand, so I know who to point to if anyone would like to make a contribution. Lucy, you can start off.
Thanks, Raymond. Thanks, Martina and Sara, for taking us through that. I guess the first thing that came to my mind was just how important the physical conditions are for this type of exercise, like with any kind of meditation or mindfulness exercise, right? So for example, now in my apartment, it's really cold. And so you're kind of focused on that. So it's, when we think, it's also important, the physical environment of any assembly, right, is very important, that physical comfort. And it just made me think about that as well. It needs to be warm enough, quiet enough. Obviously, I've got a baby here as well. So you really need to be in the right physical condition to get into that level of introspection, I think, which is important. The other thing I was thinking about is my mind went immediately to a memory, right? So I was thinking of a specific animal from my childhood way back. And I wondered, is that common in your experience? I just thought it was interesting. And lastly, and I'll finish there, I wonder if in terms of, we talked about framing for decision makers. And one thing I wondered whether it might be helpful to frame this as a type of mindfulness exercise, because I think that mindfulness is, a bit more mainstream, certainly in the UK. So that might be more helpful than thinking about, we're going to connect with non-human nature and so on, if that might appeal more to decision makers. Thanks.
Yes, that's interesting framing. Martina, you had something to say?
Yes, I was just thinking, of course, the body and the surrounding context is super important, because in this kind of connection with, as also Judith was saying, if I remember well, it is an emotional connection with something that is very separate from us, at least in our culture. So it's something that we cannot do only rationally, only with our minds. We need to call the body in to help us to connect with this other dimension. So it is really, really important to be in a context that helps us to do so, and also to gradually go into this dimension, gradually come back, because yes, I have this image in mind of crossing a bridge or something, that because in our culture nature is felt or experienced as separate from human experience. So we need to somehow cross a river or cross something, and we need time, and we need to be careful in doing so. I think we have experienced any very familiar beings, I don't know, a pet or an animal or even a place, because we also try to work with living systems more in general. And I think that it is for me personally, for example, it is easier to connect with something that I know, that I already know, with a place or with an animal or even with a person that I already know. But also we have experiences of people connecting with very far away or distant species, or so it's there can be a very wide range of experiences in that.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Kathy, and then who else? So Kathy, go first, and then Hans.
Yeah, just a couple of comments, really. First to say, Graham, I presume you remember that 2 years ago that you hosted a webinar on how to represent nature in the democratic debate, and future design was mentioned there in Japan, and it's actually taken until now for me to really learn about it. So thank you for that. And it's been really good. And the other thing I found it quite interesting that people tended to choose things that were very nice animals, really, rather than which I suppose is quite a natural way to go. But to a certain extent, I think it's really good to sort of start thinking about some of the creatures that sort of revolt us in many ways, the human being. Anyway, that's all.
That's really interesting, Kathy. I think one of the things that Judith was saying was the way that they actually assign different beings to people, and I think that's really interesting. So I took, on a personal note, I took it as Judith mentioned a small fish in the river, and I'd never think of that, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do that because she mentioned it, and that was really interesting because I thought I would do my cat because that's something I know, but actually I decided to do something that was really far away from my experience, and I thought that was really. Doing that was really helpful. So Hans, please, your comment.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on Lucy's materiality comment because that resonated with me and with my experience as well. So for me, the experience was very physical primarily. So it was not so much spiritual and like imagining other things, but more like perceiving my surroundings. So the first thing was standing still with my eyes closed. Was very interesting because maybe I don't have good balance, but I just felt very wobbly. So standing with it, I don't know if anybody else experienced that, but like I felt that I could experience the different kind of like forces pulling me in different directions, right? So even just keeping a balance was like a task. And then, so the thing that called on me was my radiator because it makes like this humming sound in the background that always annoys me. So I was like, okay, now it's your time to sympathize. And I kind of like, yeah, I went over there and I leaned against the radiator and I felt the heat and I was very still, and it kind of like it enhanced the meditative mood of the experience because it was very warm and very calm and very observatory in a way, and I imagined what the life of a radiator would be like. Just picking up on that, I think for democratic innovations, what we might be able to learn is to foreground the background, so not to perceive the landscape as a background, but as a foreground, and do this through these kind of exercises. And rather than attuning everything to be comfortable for us humans, maybe not attuning, so maybe not adjusting the temperature to our ideal a comfort zone, but maybe actually experiencing the temperature or the cold floor or whatever it might be. Yeah, so just some reflections on how to connect to the materiality in these kinds of democratic innovations.
Thanks, Hans. That's really helpful. I've got Irina, and then David, and then we'll start coming to a close after that. Irina, have you got something to say? There you are. I could see the tree, but I couldn't see you.
I was hidden. Thank you very much. So thank you again for facilitating this exercise. It's great to embody it. Also, I think it's a great take to make us to stand up, because it really makes us puts us in a different register rather than only be sitting in front of our computer. And also your guiding, your voice, like the rhythm, I find that it was very well adapted to put us in that mood. However, I would have appreciated to have maybe like an additional step to connect with the environment, because I think that could help us to actually broaden the perspective and even making our environment work in our favor. I was thinking, I don't remember, Sara, I think you said that she felt cold where she was. And maybe if we took one additional step to tap in the environment, we could project us in the Arctic and maybe embody a different kind of living being if we could use this in our favor. And also adding an additional a question regarding the interactions, not only the individual feeling of being this being, but how it interacts with the environment and if we can feel about the emotion they feel, because I think this could have helped me having a more meaningful message to transmit later on. I had to force me around to produce a message because I wasn't in that like level of synchronization. But really, thank you very much for opening this space, because as practitioners, I feel it's very valuable to go through the exercises and learn from them and from how they feel and what we need above all. Thank you very much, Martina. Thanks,
Irina. I think to be fair to Martina and Sara, they wanted more time. We asked them to do something short, so I think they would have. It would have been more of an exploration, but I think it was, yes, a really useful point. David, what time is it in Australia?
Oh, I'm not in Australia. I'm actually in Helsinki. Hence the jumper. It's I think -7 out there, where I think it's going to be 40 in Sydney in the next couple of days. So I'm much happier here. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you, because we don't normally see you because of our timing. So
exactly. Yes, I'm here for a few months, so we should chat. That was really interesting, and I really appreciated the combination of and that sort of shifting, starting with the human and moving, because in that initial centering human, your body exercise, there's so much familiarity, right? And it is sort of recognition of the everyday and things that you're feeling. But for me, anyway, as soon as I shifted and physically moved the animal, which is a bird that we've been seeing outside of our apartment here in Helsinki, my immediate response is, I don't know enough. I'm completely ignorant of this animal. I've seen it a couple of times. I've seen where it is but I feel completely inadequate in my ability to embody and to represent that. And so that to me is a key question, right? When we're trying to embody and embrace and represent others that we really don't know enough about, right? And so I understand the desire and the need to do this, but that ignorance frightens me, right? So I'm just curious about how that fits.
What I'll do is I'll give everybody, the original presenters, a chance to respond. So Lucy, this is your chance generally to say something and also respond to generally things that you've heard throughout the session.
Great. I'm actually just going to respond specifically to David's question because I've kind of said everything else that I hoped to say. I was thinking the same thing, and I was thinking about this could be really powerful if it was combined with knowledge from, you know, behavioral ecologists, animal behaviorists, and all the other knowledge that we already have out there, that gets us a little bit closer to other species' subjective experiences of the world. And that's where I come back to the idea of kind of like immersive experiences. So there's an organization called, I think it's called Marshmallow Laser Feast, which I've mentioned to a couple of other people here, and they do these immersive experiences, right, on like what it's like to be a rhizome in a specific forest in England. And I think that can be incredibly powerful, and that can be combined with the type of exercise that we've just done.
That's really great. Martina or Sara, did you want to say anything in response to what you've heard from people? Martina?
Yes, and Sara, I don't know if you.
No, sure, of course. I was going to just say you first.
In the back. Yes, thank you for all the feedback. I think it's super valuable and is interesting. I think that okay, in this case, it was a very general exercise without a very specific topic, without a context. But for example, with animals in the room, we are thinking about using this kind of methodologies in a conflict that we have in Italy between humans and bears in a certain area in the Alps. So in that case, that would be a very specific context. People who live there know what is happening there. There are, of course, many people who are experts about bear behavior, whatever it is. So, of course, it would be, I think, framed in a different way. And the access and also the contribution that these kind of exercises can bring to a topic or to a conversation can be framed or directed in a specific way. And I agree that interacting with the environment and also having more information about the context or about the specific animal or living being that you want to embody could help. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, and also probably it is something that we need to think how to apply in specific contexts that might be very different, because I imagine that a climate assembly is very different from a local participatory process where there is a very specific topic that people live every day in their everyday life. So thank you.
Thank you. Sara?
Thank you. Yes, I agree with everything Martina said. I also want to add that I invite you to take a look to the document that was sent earlier in the chat that talks about the work that reconnects, which is actually kind of where we took the idea from this practice, because I think it can also give an idea of all the things you said, actually, how important is the context, how to offer these practices, when, with a group, what group. And so I think the story of the work that reconnects can be interesting, and you can find something in that document that came earlier in the chat. Thank you.
Great. Yoshi, did you want to say anything before we leave about your thoughts on what we discussed today?
Actually, but mean that being some animal could be much harder than being imaginary future person. Wow.
Yeah.
That's my experience today.
Maybe you need a different we need a different jacket.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoshi. And Judith, the last word to you. Any thoughts on what you've on what we've just done, or on the rest of the call at all?
Nothing to add. It was a really interesting discussion, and as it was said, it was a really good combination between theory, practice, and experiment ourselves. So thank you very much for it. And perhaps we need to accept sometimes when we integrate this kind of elements into our deliberation, that the first proposals made by participants are false. There could be sometimes really, I don't know, anthropomorphism proposals. We imagine that this animal needs this thing or this thing, but it's not the animal behavior, it is our belief on it. So, but it could be a good first step to have another mindset into the deliberation. And after we can share more facts, more information, and to make the link between the emotional situation, emotional time, and a more informed step of discussion. We have to imagine that as different steps into the discussion and to be able to articulate them properly. It is a challenge for us not to stick to the first level of discussion.
Yeah, I think that's
But
right.
thank you very much.
Also where in the process you do this, where, kind of like, is it early on? Is it later when you're getting nearer? It's really interesting that will have an effect as well about what point in the design you do it, I imagine. Yeah. So this has been an absolutely fantastic morning for me, evening or night for Yoshi and others, depending upon where you are. In terms of next steps with this, I've got a couple of thoughts. One is that Julia Hoffman made the point about it will be really useful to collect the methods that are being used here, and so that's for practitioners. And Lucy said, well, maybe this is something that Participedia might be interested in doing. So I think I'll have a conversation with Lucy about this. But if anybody is interested in trying to help collate some of these methods and processes, it would be a really, I think, a really valuable a valuable thing for the community more widely. The second is I'm wondering whether or not Knoca or ourselves or we can do some sort of combination. It would be useful to do a longer version of what we did with Martina, where we actually just do that. We offer that as a space for an hour or something, and maybe Mission Publique and Proxima Cultura could develop something together. And those of us who are interested in actually just doing a very practical workshop could come together. So I'll see whether or not let me know if that's of interest to you. I think it would be nice for me to actually do it for a longer period of time. So we'll think about those. And I think that, I guess, the major take home for me is the way that I can see very clearly the kinds of challenges that have been raised around this, about trying to do this. But the way that it, either doing future design or doing the sort of non-human nature meditative exercises, both of which focus on decentering current generations, they're actually trying to widen that perspective, or what Hannah Arendt talks about. She doesn't talk about it with animals, but about enlarging your mentality. And I think that these kinds of techniques that's really critical for us when we think about trying to deal with some aspects of the climate and ecological crisis. So before we go, I'd just like to just advertise a couple of Knoca events. We're obviously on a bit of a theme in the early part of 2004. We've got a workshop in 2 weeks' time on systems thinking, and particularly what role for systems modeling. And we're going to be working with we're going to be hearing from some of the people who are designing the Swedish National Assembly, who are systems modelers. And they'll talk about how they've been trying to think about how you use different models within an assembly process. So I think that's going to be really interesting. That's on February the 1st. And then on February the 21st, we're doing in fact, Katie's in the room at the moment, but she's going to be leading a workshop on children and young people in climate assemblies. She had the experience of running a children and young people's assembly on biodiversity loss in Ireland, and also the youth engagement strategy of the Scottish Climate Assemblies. And we've asked her to provide some guidance. She's working with young people, and we will be talking about some of that guidance on the 21st. And also hearing from some young people who've been involved in its development. So obviously we're trying to kind of increase the perspective, our perspective taking over the next month or two. So I'd just like to end by thanking so much Stina and her colleagues at DBT who have been doing the technical support for this. I think you've done a great job, and Stina in particular for persuading me that it was a good idea to have a experiential part of the process. I'm an academic. I try to stay away from experience as much as possible. But so I think it was a really, really nice combination to have those kind of presentations and also to do some experiential work. I think it's a really, really important development for us at Knoca. I'd really like to thank so much Yoshi, who joined us from Japan. So it's very late in the evening and that night for him. I'd like to thank Judith. I'd like to thank Lucy and Martina and Sara. This has been a great way for me to start the day. I don't think I've had a better morning for a long time, actually. So thank you to everybody, and look forward to seeing you next time when we do a Knoca event. Take care, everybody.